Hello and welcome to the Sewing Studio. Today I'm going to show you how to make this little project bag, which is perfect for if you're going off to a workshop. So this has all been made out of scraps from the Tula Pink range. This is part of the fat quarters that I had left over, and it's Tula Pink Free Spirit Daydreamer range. So this little project bag has got poppers. It hasn't got a handle, but you could put a handle on it if you wanted to. And it's got pockets for all of your tools. And it's got a big open space at the bottom. So I've got in there a jelly roll, I've got some pins, I've got some thread, I've got my notebook. So it's a nice big roomy bag, and it's got pockets on both sides. So I'm just going to take all of this out for a moment, and I'll show you the pockets on the other side. So I've made pockets with 3 sections for this side, and on the other side I've made a pocket with 2 sections. I've made it a big square boxy bottom, so it's nice and big. As I say, you could put handles on it, but I've just chosen to put these poppers on it because it's quite a nice feel to carry it like this. So how do we make that? Let me just pop these away, and I'll show you how you make it. So the first thing you need to do is to make your pockets. So I've made one already, and this is really simple to do. So with this was just strips that I had left over. So I have joined 5 strips of 2.5 inches together, and I've made it 7.5 inches down, and then I've cut the lining 10 by 7.5 inches. So all you do is you sew those together, right sides together, and turn it through to make your pocket. So I'm just going over to the machine to do that first of all. I'm going to leave a gap for turning, and on this one I've left the gap at the side because when I come to put this pocket on, I'm going to attach it on the side, and that will also close my gap. So I'm just going over to do that. And then I'm going to trim off the corners, and I'm going to turn it through. And then I'm going to give it a good press. I'm just going over to the iron to give it a good press. I'm just going to snip off a couple of these little frayed threads that have come through. As I say, especially when you're making it from scraps, you sometimes get little bits that are frayed. But before I go over to the iron, I'm just going to say, if you like what we do, don't forget to like and subscribe. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram and TikTok. You can see customer makes, you can see behind the scenes. We'll answer all of your questions in the comments below. So there we've got our 2 pockets. So what we do is we then attach our pockets to our main piece of fabric. So I used up lots of scraps and just joined them all together to make a piece of fabric which measured 15.5 by 13.5. But for today's video, I've chosen this Bella Solid fabric, which is a gorgeous bright pink colour, because I think it goes really well with this lovely Kaffa set range. So I've got 2 pieces of fabric here, and as I say, these measure 15.5 by 13.5. And then what I've done is I've cut out a 3-inch square from the corners. So you can see that I've done that on both of my pieces, which is the outer bag, and I've also done it on both of the pieces, which is the lining. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to attach our pockets to the front and back of the bag. So I'm going to line these up, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to put a finger press there so I get roughly the center fold and line those up, and I'm coming just fractionally above these corners here, just fractionally above, because what I don't want it to do is I don't want the pocket to get caught in this bottom seam here. So then I'm going to pop some pins in. And I'm going to do these with both of the pockets. And then I'm going over to the machine and I'm going to sew down the sides of each one and along the bottom. And what this will do, this will also close our gap that we've left open for turning that through. And then you need to decide whether you want a big pocket or whether you want to sew down and make some single pockets. So on this one here, for example, I've got two which are two of the strips, and then I've got one, so that was really for the rotary cutter, that one. But you might want to put pens in, so you might want to make it smaller, or you might want to have 5 individual pockets. It's entirely up to you. But now is the time to put in your stitch lines to make your pockets. So I'm going to do that with both of them. With one of them, I'm just going to have a bigger pocket and a slightly narrow one. And with the other one, I'm going to have 2 wider ones and 1 narrow one. So they're just slightly different, but it's entirely up to you. So I'm just going to the machine to do that. So you can see I've made 3 pockets here and I've made just 2 pockets here. So I'm just going to tidy up some of those loose threads. And what you could have done is where you've done your stitch down to make the pocket, you could have done a fancy stitch or a decorative stitch if you'd wanted to. And I've just gone backwards and forwards doing a locking stitch to just give that a little bit more security so it doesn't pull away with lots of use. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to join your lining to your outer fabric, and I've just used a white on white. So with right sides together, I'm going to machine right across the top. So I'm joining this to my front, and I'm going to do the same with the back of my bag. I'm going to join the lining to the back, right sides together. So I'm just going over to the sewing machine to do those. And I'm just going to give those a press. And I'm going to press the lining down so it goes into the darker fabric because it's a light lining. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put these together, right sides together. I'm going to line those up, and I'm going to sew straight across the top here of the pink piece. So I'm going to sew straight across there. Just put a couple of pins in there. But with the lining, I need to leave a gap for turning this through. So this bottom bit of the lining, which is going to fit into the bottom of the bag, right down there, I'm going to leave a gap so I can turn it through and we can stitch that closed afterwards. And then when I've done that, I'm then going to sew right the way down both of these sides. So I'm going to the machine to do that. And then the next thing we're going to do, and I'll try and show you on this camera, is we're going to open out these corners and we're going to sew them across. So we're going to sew them across like that. So I'll just show you that again. So they were like this, and then I'm going to open them out and sew them across. And I'm going to do that with all 4 corners. So that's the lining ones done. Now I'm going to do the outside of the bag across those corners. And then we're going to turn it all the way through. And actually, I've just realised I haven't left a very big gap. I'm going to make my life difficult here. So I'm just going to open the gap a little bit because I don't think I'm going to get it turned all the way through. Just trying to make my life a little bit easier. It doesn't really matter about this bit because I'm going to sew this shut anyway, so it doesn't matter how big it is. That's better. Let's turn it all the way through. Just push out those corners. Push out the lining corners. And then I would go back to the machine and I would just machine that gap closed. But before I do that, I'm just going to give that a little press to hold it in place. So I would normally go back to the machine and just machine that gap closed. And then once that's closed, I would push all of this down inside. Pushing your corners into each other in the boxy bit. And then finally, I would give this top section a good press. So you could, if you wanted to, you could top stitch all the way around there. I haven't done it on this one because this had a bit of a patterned fabric. And then what I've done next is I've put some poppers. Now, if you wanted to put handles on, you could do that. Now's the time to put the handles on. Or alternatively, if you want it like this one, you can just put your poppers on it and you can carry it like that. And then you just fill it up with all the things that you want to take on your workshop, or if you're going to your quilt group. And that is how you make yourself a little project bag using up all your scraps. So as always, make it your own, have fun, and I look forward to seeing you next time here in the sewing studio.